Before we begin, if you believe some stories aren't just meant to be heard but felt, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because sometimes a single truth can change everything you thought you understood about love. He had been fixing things around the house all evening. Not because they desperately needed repair, but because broken hinges and loose screws were easier to deal with than a broken heart. He moved from one corner of the house to another like a man on a quiet mission. Tighten this. Adjust that. Replace the bulb. Realign the cabinet door. His hands stayed busy, steady, focused. His mind did not. Every time the house grew too quiet, memory slipped in. A laugh echoing in the hallway. Soft footsteps on the stairs. A familiar voice calling his name. He pushed the thoughts away the same way he pushed a drawer closed, firmly, without looking inside. In the kitchen, water ran gently into the sink. Plates touched porcelain with soft clinks. His mother stood there, shoulders slightly bent, washing dishes that had already been clean. She had developed that habit recently. Cleaning what wasn't dirty. Straightening what wasn't messy. As if controlling small things could make up for the things she couldn't control. He noticed how tired she looked when she thought no one was watching. He noticed how she forced a smile when he walked into a room. He noticed everything. And he hated that she carried his pain silently, just like he carried his own. He tightened the last screw on the cabinet and let out a quiet breath. For a moment, he stared at his reflection in the metal surface. A year had passed, but it didn't feel like healing. It felt like surviving. Without thinking too much about it, he walked into the kitchen and wrapped his arms gently around his mother from behind. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't desperate. It was gratitude. She stiffened slightly, surprised by the sudden warmth, then slowly relaxed into his embrace. Her hands were still damp from the sink. For a few seconds, the world felt simple again. Then she inhaled sharply. Not a normal breath. A trembling one. He pulled back just enough to see her face. Her expression wasn't calm. It wasn't reassuring. It was burdened. "There's something you need to know," she whispered. Her voice sounded different. Softer. Fragile. Something inside him tightened. "What do you mean?" She turned off the faucet. The kitchen fell completely silent. The silence felt intentional. "Not here," she said gently. "Sit with me." The way she said it made the air heavier. This wasn't about an old story. This wasn't about family history. This was about something recent. Something unfinished. They walked to the dining table together. The chairs scraped softly against the floor as they sat down across from each other. A cup of tea sat between them, forgotten and cold. She folded her hands together tightly. He had never seen her hesitate like this before. "I've watched you this past year," she began slowly. "I've watched you pretend you were fine." He almost interrupted her. Almost said, "I am fine." But something in her eyes stopped him. "This isn't just about heartbreak," she continued. "It's about something I kept from you." His heartbeat changed rhythm. "What did you keep?" She opened the drawer beside her carefully, like it contained something fragile. She pulled out an old envelope. It wasn't new. It wasn't neatly preserved. It had been handled many times. Folded. Unfolded. Considered. Hidden. The sight of it made his stomach drop. She placed it gently on the table. It came the week after she left. His throat went dry. "A letter." She nodded. "For you." The room felt smaller. You kept it?" he asked quietly. "She asked me to." Those words landed harder than expected. She didn't want to hurt you more. She said she couldn't face you. She thought distance would protect you. A wave of emotions hit him at once. Confusion. Anger. Curiosity. Hope. "You decided I didn't deserve to read it?" he asked. Tears filled her eyes instantly. "I thought I was protecting you. I thought maybe she would come back once things settled. I didn't want to reopen your wounds if the letter only made them worse." For months, she had carried that secret alone. He stared at the envelope. A year of silence lived inside that thin paper. A year of unanswered questions. A year of wondering what he did wrong. He picked it up. It felt lighter than it should have. His hands trembled slightly as he turned it over. His name was written on the front in handwriting he would recognize anywhere. Careful. Familiar. Pamphili familiar. He slid his finger under the flap and slowly unfolded it. His pulse echoed in his ears. The first line waited. The truth waited. But before his eyes could even focus, a knock sounded at the door. Sharp, clear, unexpected. Both of them froze. Another knock followed. Then a voice. Soft, uncertain, familiar in a way that made his entire body go still. Are you home? The letter slipped slightly in his hand. No. It couldn't be. Not after a year. Not after silence that long. He stood up slowly. His mother's eyes widened, but she didn't speak. The voice came again. Gentler this time. Pleased if you're there. The sound of it shattered something inside him. Because he knew that voice. He would always know that voice. He walked toward the door as if gravity had changed. Each step heavier than the last. He reached for the handle. Paused. His heart pounded so loudly he was sure it could be heard from the other side. And then, he opened the door. Cold winter air rushed in. Snowflakes drifted under the porch light. And there she stood. Like a memory he had tried to bury. Like a question he never got to answer. Her hair damp from falling snow. Her cheeks pink from the cold. Her eyes filled with fear. And something else. Hope. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Time didn't move. The letter remained in his trembling hand. And suddenly, everything he thought he had buried came rushing back. The cold air lingered between them. Snow fell softly behind her, settling quietly on the porch railing. As if the world outside had slowed down just to watch what would happen next. For a moment, neither of them spoke. A year of silence stood between them like an invisible wall. I didn't know if you'd open the door, she said quietly. Her voice carried exhaustion. Not just from the cold, but from something much deeper. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes searched her face, noticing the small changes. The faint shadows under her eyes. The way her shoulders curved inward slightly, as if she'd been carrying something heavy for too long. Behind him, his mother appeared briefly in the hallway. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. I'll give you space, she whispered before stepping away. Now it was just the two of them. Standing at the threshold. Not inside. Not outside. Somewhere in between. Her gaze dropped to the letter in his hand. So she finally gave it to you. You knew she had it, he asked. I asked her to keep it, she admitted. That answer stung more than he expected. Why? She swallowed. Because I didn't trust myself to explain it without breaking. The wind pushed against the door again. He stepped aside silently. Gumin. She walked inside slowly, brushing snow off her coat. The door closed with a quiet click, sealing the moment. The house felt different now. Charged. Alive with tension. He didn't sit. He didn't offer tea. He just stood there, holding the letter. Why are you here? He asked finally. Not angry, but raw. Because I owe you the truth, she replied. You owed me that a year ago. Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. I know. Silence stretched between them. You left without a real explanation, he continued. You let me think I wasn't enough. That's not why I left. Then why? She closed her eyes briefly, gathering courage. The week before I left, I found out I was pregnant. The words hit the air like glass breaking. He blinked. What? I didn't tell you because 2 days later, I lost the baby. Everything inside him went still. The anger that had burned for a year suddenly tangled with something else. Shock, grief, confusion. You went through that alone, he asked quietly. She nodded. I thought if I told you, it would change everything. You had just gotten accepted into your program. You were excited about your future. I didn't want to derail your life. You thought I'd see our child as a derailment? No, she whispered. I thought you'd sacrifice everything for me. And I didn't want to be the reason you gave up your dreams. He ran a hand through his hair, overwhelmed. You didn't trust me to choose. She flinched slightly at the truth of that. I was scared, she said. I was grieving. And I didn't know how to be strong for both of us. The room felt heavier. But why disappear? He asked. Why not just tell me about the loss? Because I blamed myself. I felt like I failed you before you even knew. Tears slid down her face freely now. I thought if I stepped away, you'd heal faster. I thought I was protecting you from more pain. He looked down at the letter. So everything I believed this year was wrong. I never stopped loving you, she said softly. Those words didn't feel dramatic. They felt tired, honest, real. He walked to the dining table slowly and sat down. She followed, keeping distance. He unfolded the letter and began to read. Every word confirmed what she had just told him. Her fear, her grief, her love, her belief that leaving was an act of sacrifice. By the time he reached the last line, his hands were shaking. I should have been there, he said quietly. You couldn't have been. I didn't let you. Silence again. But this silence was different. It wasn't full of questions. It was full of understanding. A year of anger slowly softened into something else. Not forgiveness yet, but perspective. Why now? He asked finally. Because running didn't fix anything, she replied. Because I've spent a year realizing that love doesn't protect someone by disappearing. It protects by staying. The simplicity of that truth settled between them. I'm not asking you to forget, she continued. I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I just didn't want another year to pass with you thinking I left because I didn't care. He studied her carefully. The fear in her eyes wasn't fear of rejection. It was fear of not being heard. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then he said something neither of them expected. I'm angry. She nodded. You have every right to be. I'm hurt. I know. But I also understand why you were scared. Her breath caught slightly. And I don't want fear making decisions for us again, he finished. Hope flickered across her face, cautious but present. So what does that mean? She asked carefully. It means, he said slowly, if we try again it's different this time. She didn't interrupt. No beating. No protecting each other from imagined futures. No deciding what the other can or can't handle. Tears filled her eyes again, but these were different. Not just grief. Relief. I promise, she whispered. He exhaled deeply. For a year, I thought I wasn't enough. You were always enough. For a year, I thought I failed. You didn't. For a year, I hated myself for not fighting harder. You couldn't fight what you didn't know. The truth in that statement untangled something inside him. Outside, snow continued to fall quietly. Inside, something else began to settle. Not perfection. Not instant healing. But honesty. He stood up slowly. Walked around the table. Stopped in front of her. For a second, neither of them moved. Then gently, carefully, he pulled her into an embrace. Not desperate. Not dramatic. Just real. She broke down quietly against his chest, releasing a year's worth of held breath. And for the first time since she left, he didn't feel abandoned. He felt informed. There was still pain. There was still work to do. But the silence was gone. His mother watched from the hallway again, this time with tears in her eyes. Not because everything was perfect, but because the truth had finally entered the room. And sometimes, that's where healing begins. Months later, things weren't magically easy. They talked more. They argued honestly. They grieved together. They attended counseling. They rebuilt trust one conversation at a time. There were days when old hurt resurfaced. But there were more days when understanding replaced assumption. They learned something neither of them had known before. Love doesn't fail because of tragedy. It fails because of silence. And this time, they chose not to be silent. A year later, the house didn't feel hollow anymore. It felt lived in. Alive. Hopeful. Not because nothing painful had happened, but because they faced it together. And that made all the difference. If this story touched you even a little, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Because sometimes love doesn't end. Sometimes it just waits for the truth.